Psalm 3. In a land where fear and uncertainty reigned, there lived a man whose faith was tested beyond what many could endure. His enemies, once few, had multiplied into an overwhelming force that surrounded him on all sides. Their whispers of doom and defeat echoed in his ears, growing louder with each passing day. "Look at him," they sneered. "There is no salvation for him. Even his God has abandoned him. What hope does he have?" These words, though sharp and cruel, did not break his spirit. He could feel the weight of their malice pressing down on him, but he knew deep within his soul that his trust in Jehovah, the God of his ancestors, was his strength. The doubts they sowed only served to push him closer to the Lord. "O Lord Jehovah, my God," he cried out in the solitude of his heart, "though the world may rise against me, you are my shield. You protect me from every arrow, from every strike, from every blow. In you I find my refuge. You are my glory, the one who lifts my head when the weight of the world seeks to bow it down." He spoke these words not in despair, but in defiance of the hopelessness that surrounded him. His enemies did not see what he saw. They could not comprehend the depth of his faith. To them, he was a man on the verge of destruction, but to him, he was a man standing firm in the palm of the Almighty. In the stillness of the night, when the darkness seemed to stretch on forever, and the silence was heavy with threats unspoken, he lifted his voice again to the heavens. "O Lord," he prayed, his words a quiet but fervent plea, "from your holy mountain, hear my cry. I call upon you, for you alone are my salvation. There is no other help but you." And as if in answer to his prayer, a peace that surpassed all understanding washed over him. The fear that once gripped his heart loosened its hold. His mind, once racing with thoughts of the many foes surrounding him, quieted. He lay down, his body sinking into the earth, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, he slept. The rest was deep, untroubled by dreams of danger or defeat. He slept, not because the threats had disappeared, but because the Lord was with him. Jehovah had granted him the peace of knowing that no matter how dire the circumstances, God was in control. The morning came, and with it, a renewed sense of strength. He awoke, not groggy or afraid, but alert, confident, because he knew the hand of the Lord had sustained him through the night. He stood tall, unshaken by the sight of the multitude still gathered around him, their eyes filled with hatred, their weapons at the ready. "How can I fear?" he thought to himself. "Even if 10,000 men rise against me, even if they encircle me on every side, I will not be moved. For Jehovah my God is my defender. He is the one who lifts me up." His voice rang out again, this time louder, stronger, a battle cry to the heavens. "Arise, O Lord! Save me, O my God! Strike down my enemies as you have done before. Break their strength, shatter their pride, for they dare to rise against your servant. But you, O God, are mightier than they. You have struck the jaws of my foes. You have shattered their teeth, and you will do it again." With these words, he stood tall, his heart unwavering. He knew that the battle ahead was not his to fight alone. The Lord of hosts was with him, and that knowledge gave him courage that no man could take away. His enemies might gather in greater numbers, but it would make no difference. Salvation belonged to the Lord, and in his hands victory was assured. He walked among the people, his steps firm, his posture tall, for he carried within him the knowledge of Jehovah's power. He knew that his enemies were not just flesh and blood, but forces of darkness, powers that sought to bring him down and to crush his spirit. But how could they succeed when the bone of all creation was his shield? When the creator of the heavens and the earth had set his hand upon him, promising protection and victory? As he moved forward, he remembered the many battles the Lord had fought for his people throughout history. The stories of old filled his mind, the Red Sea parting for Moses and the Israelites, the walls of Jericho crumbling at the sound of Joshua's trumpets, David standing victorious over Goliath with nothing but a sling and a stone. In every story, it was not human strength or cunning that brought deliverance, but the mighty hand of God. And so with every step, his faith grew stronger. His heart swelled with gratitude. "O Lord," he whispered once more, "may your blessing fall upon your people. May we always remember that our hope, our strength, and our salvation come from you alone." The day passed and still his enemies watched, waiting for him to falter, to show some sign of weakness. But they would wait in vain, for the man who placed his trust in Jehovah knew no defeat. His confidence was not in his own abilities, but in the God who had chosen him, the God who had promised to be with him always. As the sun set once more and the stars began to shine in the night sky, he knelt in prayer. The world was still filled with uncertainty. His enemies still surrounded him, but none of that mattered. His heart was at peace, for he had laid his burdens at the feet of the Lord. Jehovah, he prayed, I have seen your hand at work. You have saved me from the snares of the wicked. You have lifted me up when the world sought to bring me down. You are my strength, my shield, my fortress. In you I find my refuge, my salvation. Let your name be glorified in all the earth, and let your people see your mighty works. For yours is the power, yours is the glory, and yours is the victory forever and ever. And as he rose from his knees, he knew that no matter what the future held, he would stand firm. For Jehovah, the Lord of hosts, was with him, and nothing, no force of man or spirit, could stand against the will of God. In the days that followed, his enemies grew weary. They could not understand the source of his strength, the unwavering courage that seemed to fill him even in the face of overwhelming odds. Little by little, they began to retreat, their confidence shaken, for they had come to realize that they were not fighting a mere man, but the God who stood behind him, the God who had promised never to leave him nor forsake him. And so with the same peace that had filled his heart that first night, he continued to walk in faith, his head held high, his spirit unbroken, for he knew that his salvation did not come from men or the strength of arms, but from the Lord, Jehovah, the God of his ancestors, the God who had always been and who always would be his protector and his guide. For the rest of his days, the man lived in the knowledge of Jehovah's love and power. He faced trials, to be sure, but in every hardship, he found solace in the presence of his God. He knew that the Lord had been his shield, his glory, the lifter of his head, and would remain so for all eternity. And so his story became a song passed down through generations, a reminder to all who would hear it that no matter how many enemies rise against you, no matter how dark the night may seem, the Lord is always near, ready to save, ready to lift your head high, and ready to grant you peace beyond all understanding. For salvation belongs to Jehovah, and his blessing is upon his people forever. Psalm 4. O God of righteousness, hear my plea when I call to you. In my distress, you have set me free and brought me to Beas, open spaces. Show me mercy once again and listen to my prayer. O sons of men, how long will you dishonor my glory? How long will you love the hollow things of this world, chasing after what is false and deceitful? Know this, the Lord sets apart the faithful for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. Tremble in awe before him, but do not sin. When you lie down at night, search your hearts deeply and be silent. Offer righteous sacrifices and trust in the Lord. Many ask, who will show us any good? Lord, let the light of your face shine upon us. You have filled my heart with joy, far greater than when their grain and wine abound. In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. This prayer begins with a cry, not from a place of comfort, but from a soul weighed down by the injustices of the world. The voice behind these words has been hurt, burdened by the lies and vanities pursued by those around him. He is a man surrounded by those who chase after fleeting things, falsehoods that bring only temporary satisfaction. But instead of sinking into despair or retaliation, he turns to God. In this ancient dialogue between the heart and heaven, the psalmist begins with an appeal to the God of justice. It is a plea for divine intervention, a plea for relief in a world where righteousness seems overshadowed by deceit. Yet within this plea is an underlying trust. There is no doubt in the psalmist's mind that God hears him, that God sees him in his distress. It's not just a call for deliverance from the external troubles, but also a recognition of the deep inner need for God's presence. When all around is turmoil, when deceit seems to reign, and when the psalmist's name and glory are being dishonored, it is the Lord who offers the ultimate sanctuary, a wide and spacious place, a metaphorical room of safety. The psalmist then turns his attention to the people, those who dishonor his glory, those who seek after worthless things. His question is direct and cutting. How long will you pursue falsehoods? It is a challenge to all who are caught up in the vanity of life, those who chase after what cannot fulfill. It is a call to reflection, to pause and consider the true worth of what they seek. The world, with all its trappings, often blinds us to what is real and lasting. The psalmist's frustration here is palpable, and it's a frustration that many can relate to. We live in a world where vanity and deceit still thrive, where people often place their worth in things that hold no eternal value. But the psalmist is not without hope. He knows that the Lord sets apart the righteous. God sees beyond the superficial. He knows the hearts of those who seek him. In the quiet moments of reflection, in the silence of the night, the psalmist urges his listeners to tremble and to meditate on their ways. It is a call to self-examination, to pause and reflect on the path they are walking. There is wisdom in silence. In a world filled with noise, where opinions and judgments are thrown around carelessly, the psalmist encourages stillness. He invites his listeners to lie on their beds, to be quiet, and to search their hearts. This is a profound moment of introspection where the soul can connect with the divine. But the silence is not without purpose. It leads to a call for righteousness. The psalmist urges the people to offer sacrifices of righteousness and to place their trust in God. Sacrifices in the ancient world were acts of worship. But here, the psalmist is not just referring to the physical sacrifices offered on altars. He is calling for a life lived in righteousness, a life that reflects the goodness and justice of God. This is the true sacrifice, one that goes beyond ritual and enters into the heart of what it means to be faithful. Trust in the Lord, the psalmist says, and there you will find peace. And yet, amid this journey of trust, there is a deep question that arises from the hearts of the people. Who will show us any good? It is a question that echoes through the ages, one that many have asked in times of despair. When life feels hard, when injustice seems rampant, when the world feels dark and hopeless, this question becomes more poignant. Where is the good? In response, the psalmist offers not just an answer, but a prayer. Lord, let the light of your face shine upon us. It is not the grain, the wine, or the material wealth that will bring fulfillment, but the presence of God. The light of God's face represents his favor, his presence, his blessing. It is the divine radiance that shines even in the darkest moments. The psalmist acknowledges that true joy comes not from external circumstances, but from the light of God's presence in our lives. And this deep, unshakable joy surpasses any material wealth. Even when the world celebrates its abundant harvests, when others are rejoicing in their grain and wine, the psalmist finds a joy that is deeper. It is a walk rooted in something eternal, something that the world cannot give nor take away. This joy comes from knowing that the Lord is near. As the psalm draws to a close, the tone shifts from a cry for help to one of peaceful resolution. In peace I will lie down and sleep. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. These words reflect a soul that has found its rest. The psalmist is no longer distressed. He is no longer weighed down by the troubles around him. Instead, he finds peace in the knowledge that God is his protector. It is a peace that allows him to rest, to lay down and sleep without fear, because he knows that the Lord is watching over him. This peace is not just the absence of conflict, it is the presence of God's assurance. It is a deep inner rest that comes from knowing that God holds all things in his hands. Even when the world around us is in turmoil, when falsehoods seem to prosper and vanity reigns, we can find peace in God's unwavering presence. The psalmist's journey from distress to peace mirrors the journey of many who have walked through seasons of difficulty. There are times when we feel overwhelmed by the weight of the world, when injustice and deceit seem to have the upper hand. But this psalm reminds us that we can bring our burdens to God. He hears our cries, he sees our pain, and he responds with mercy and love. The psalmist does not just pray for deliverance from his external troubles. He prays for a deeper connection with God. He seeks the light of God's face, the joy that comes from his presence. And in that presence, he finds the peace that allows him to rest. In a world filled with noise and distractions, this ancient prayer offers a profound invitation to stillness, reflection, and trust. It reminds us that true peace and joy are not found in the things of this world, but in the presence of God. His light shines brighter than any darkness, and his love is more abundant than any material blessing. As we reflect on this psalm, may we too find the courage to pause, to be still, and to seek the light of God's face. May we find our joy in his presence, and may we rest in the peace that only he can give.